All right, man, here we go. We are live. I'm live here with longtime MMA ref and now current high school ref, John Hosegood. He wrestled in high school and junior high. He'll tell you nothing to call home about, but he did roll around a little bit. 25 years he's been involved in MMA. It's his third year reffing at the high school level. And he's from Lakeland, Florida, now living out in lovely Winter Haven, home of Legoland. And he's here with us today. And thank you so much, sir, for coming on. I do appreciate it. And so what's been going on through this whole rigmarole we've been in over the last few months, man?
Yeah, a whole lot of nothing. I guess everybody's trying to keep their social distance and trying to fight the fight, I guess, against this whole thing. And looks like we might be coming on the backside of it now, hopefully.
Yeah, so far it's looking like people are starting to get a little brave and get back out there and open up a little bit. It's crazy. You look at the numbers, and even though it's such a small percentage per whatever, it's kind of misleading, because it can just happen, right? So you kind of have to just be careful. And I don't know, man, you kind of get a little mind screwed there thinking about it.
I'm kind of just taking as it comes. I'm not running around in a panic like my hair's on fire. But at the same time, it's the guidelines they're giving you to live by. It's like there's no point in getting all stressed out about it. You don't really have a choice. So
yeah. I was happy. We've been out since, I think, May 12th. We were supposed to go to Colorado because every year we typically go to Colorado for a week. We used to do it the first week of January, but now that Daniel's in ninth grade and in seventh and eighth grade, it really didn't matter if he missed a wrestling match or whatever, so we go during winter break. But he didn't want to do that anymore, so we moved it to spring. So March 12th, we were supposed to fly out, and that was right when people said, "Hey, be careful," it kind of all started the fire. So we ended up not going. We've been home for a few months, and then my wife just ended up getting her business back open. So, and I started this. So we're kind of doing it ourselves, man. So what have you been up to, man? You've been doing any training or anything, or you just been kind of sitting home?
Yeah, little bit. I just opened the gyms and stuff back up. So that's been able to get me. I do a lot of CrossFit, so that's been able to get me back in the routine. But I definitely felt it this last week that training hasn't been what it's normally been. So
Man, that's great. So, excuse me. With the evolving of CrossFit over the last 10 years, man, how important has it been to MMA fighters? Do you see a lot of transition into CrossFit, or are they still doing kind of their own traditional stuff?
Initially, I think that there were some fighters that started training, CrossFit early on, but CrossFit kind of developed into a kind of sport. So it doesn't, I don't think, translate perfectly into fighting anymore, or even wrestling. I mean, it's a exercise program. I think they take some CrossFit-ish ideas, but I wouldn't say it's like a seamless move from one to the other. It's a little different.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, it seems like athletes at that level were doing some sort of CrossFit before anybody knew it was called CrossFit, right? They were running, lifting, jumping.
Yeah, well, they have like BJ Penn was one of the early guys that started doing CrossFit, but even then he had workouts developed that would translate. Matter of fact, there's one workout CrossFit has called Fight Gone Bad, and it was specifically designed for BJ Penn when he was training for a 5-round title fight. So yeah, but so even in the early days, they were trying to take some of the principles of CrossFit and blend them a little more seamlessly into the world of fighting.
That's awesome, man. BJ Penn, man, I remember when he was at the top of his game, and he was hard to beat.
Yeah,
But a lot of kids are out there in Hawaii now getting taught by him, right?
Yeah, there's Hawaii's always been kind of a hotbed. Like everybody wants to think about, black sand beaches and parties and luau's and all that, but there's some hard nosed guys in Hawaii for sure, for sure.
That's awesome, man. So talk about your well, before we get into that, you've been in this MMA thing since I think we were talking off the air, 93 or 94. And how important has wrestling been to the MMA athlete?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. I mean, it provides such a good base for guys that are going to fight in MMA that I mean, I don't even think you can understate it. We've had something like, if you just look at UFC alone, 30, I want to say 32, 33 UFC champions over the years. Don't quote me on that number exactly, but I think it's right in that ballpark. Former wrestlers, level wrestlers. Even there's so many of these guys that are out now that have at least some kind of wrestling base. It's just like you can't understate it to the point now where a lot of the kids that are coming up taking Brazilian jiu-jitsu and different forms of submission wrestling, they start wrestling just to make their jiu-jitsu better.
Yeah, I had these two little dudes on. They're 7 years old. They're twins, and if you go to Instagram, they're called the Twinges, right?
Yeah.
And the dad is a martial arts teacher out in California, and he said he made the mistake of only focusing on one art when he was younger. So he realized how important wrestling was. So his two little kids, he started them with wrestling, and then he's growing them into jujitsu and judo and things like that. But
Right.
But he said, and I think I've talked to other martial artists, it's like when a wrestler comes into a martial art room, you're like, okay, cool. I got 50% of it's already taught. I can take it the rest of the way. But when a jujitsu guy comes into the wrestling room, the wrestling coach is like, oh no, okay, we got to teach him how to get off his back. Don't go on your back. Don't go on your back. Right? Because on your back is bad news in wrestling.
Well, I think too that when you look at, like if somebody comes in, if they come from like a traditional martial art, like, karate, taekwondo, something along those lines, and they come in and decide they want to start training in MMA, like the whole point of the ground game is it takes a while. There's a little bit of a delay because it takes a while for them to even get familiar with moving their bodies around on the ground efficiently and positioning and things like that. And wrestlers are a little bit ahead of the game because they're at least already familiar with that aspect. And it takes a while for people to get comfortable on the ground. So they feel a little bit like a fish out of water. A wrestler may not have any idea about any submission whatsoever, and he may give up his back and give up his neck or whatever when he's starting out, but he can at least move his body efficiently around on the ground. If you're instructing him and telling him, okay, you need to go from a north-south position to a side to a, whatever, like they can just do that seamlessly. It's not a hard concept for them to understand. So then really wrestlers early on, all they need to do is they just need to know enough about submissions to not get caught in them. They don't even have to be good at them right away. So it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, and even the jiu-jitsu guys will say, man, when a wrestler's in the room, I just got to make sure he doesn't get a hold of me, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it's, the original back in the day, you hear on MMA broadcasts all the time about ground and pound. The guys like back in the day, like Mark Coleman in the early days of the UFC, that was a phrase that he kind of coined because he didn't know anything about submissions. He could get caught, but he was strong. He was a great wrestler out of Ohio State, and he would just hold them down and pound them, take them down and pound them, and just knew enough about submissions to not get caught, not let them get in certain positions, and he would just pound on them. And that's where that phrase comes from, ground and pound.
Yeah, and you can definitely see when you get that. So talk a little bit about your transition from you were ref in MMA for all these years, and probably your whole adult life, and then the last 3 years you've transitioned into high school wrestling referee. Talk a little bit about transitioning and how it's been for you and all that good stuff.
Well, it's been great. My son was a wrestler through middle school, high school, a little bit in college. And, I, watched him. It kind of made me fall in love with wrestling all over again, watching him wrestle and all those things. So they were always kind of pestering me a little bit about, hey, why don't you start reffing? We need more officials, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not going to do it until my son graduates. Well, because I didn't want to miss any of his matches or any of his tournaments. So once he graduated in 2017, then I was like, okay, yeah. So I was doing both for a while. I kind of retired from the MMA thing last year. I had 12 years officiate as an official with MMA, and I just kind of, so now I do just high school, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot of great people. Still get to see a lot of the people that I saw, around, because we have, wrestling families, and of course a lot of the coaches are still there. So it's been a good time. It's been a good time. I can say I really, really enjoy it.
That's awesome. How different is it?
It's a lot different. The positioning is different, and I still catch myself. The positioning that you want to be in officiating a wrestling match versus the position that you need to be in to have a good angle at seeing a fight is completely different. And I still find myself sometimes sliding into those old habits. And so it takes a conscious thought process to make sure that I'm always where I need to be, because it's foreign to me after 12 years of MMA.
You haven't tackled a kid off another kid yet, like the MMA ref?
Yeah, no, but of course I haven't had any kids knocked out either. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know prior to getting into reffing, you threw some hands yourself. So talk a little bit about that and some of your most memorable moments as far as a fighter is concerned.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people are more recent fans of MMA. Back when I started, it wasn't even called MMA. It was called NHB, which stood for Nose Bar. And it was before we had gloves. There were 3 rules. There was no eye gouging, there was no eye gouging, no fish hooking, and no pulling hair when I got started. And that was it. Like the groin shots were legal when I started. They phased out. Yeah. They phased those out.
Man.
But it was a lot different. So in the early days, it was kind of like the Wild West. We would basically you had no idea who you were fighting. They would throw an event, and you would show up and weigh in. And there were 2 weight classes. It was over 200 and under 200. And I used to cut to 199. And then sometimes half the time they just kind of try to pair you up against somebody fairly close, but you never knew who you were going to fight. You never knew, the internet wasn't even a huge thing then. So you had no idea who you were fixing to fight. And we'd be in bars or little event centers, or we had fights literally. We had events like in the parking lot of bars on a wrestling mat with no cage, no ropes, no nothing. So those days were they're an era gone by, probably rightfully so, but they were a lot of fun if that's what you were into.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with sanctioning commissions and everything now, I'm sure that.
Yeah, no, those days are definitely long gone for sure.
Probably still have some stuff like that. So talk about the advancement of MMA over the last 25 years. I know we talked a little bit about the ground and pound. You can obviously see, I mean, I remember watching guys that I thought could just never be touched. And then the next generation comes in and they can't touch them. And you look at the girls, Rousey used to be just a beast. And then all these girls came up and they started becoming well-rounded, and now they're just incredible. So talk about the advancement of the sport.
Oh, wow. It's like, and I've said this to other people, just when we having private conversations, like it's not the same sport at all anymore. What you have now is you now have, back in my day when I first got started, it was still, for any of the old MMA fans that remember the early UFCs, they would say, well, this guy's a wrestler and this guy's a boxer and this guy's a karate guy and this guy, and, now everybody's well-rounded. You're looking at third, theoretically fourth generation MMA fighters at the pro level now. You're talking about guys who that's what they have trained like since they were children, blending all the arts. So the skill level there is just through the roof. The talent pool's much deeper now. It's just, the average, I would say the average MMA fighter, like just local level fighter, skill and talent wise, could probably have beaten any champions from, like, say, the mid 90s. Just the average guy now. So it's become much more of a science, and the training is much more well-rounded. And like I said, we're really looking at, in my opinion, like the fourth generation, of evolution of the sport. So it's just going to continue to get better and better and better, and just like anything. And of course, the more money gets involved, the deeper the talent pool of athlete you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see it on ESPN now and see where it's come from when we were kids, and the only way we could watch it was we had to ride our bikes over to Blockbuster Video. Mm-hmm. If anybody out there knows what that is, it's an old video store to get you.
Now we're dating ourselves.
And we'd ride our bikes, go down there, and we'd rent. They'd have a wall that would say it had UFC 1 or 2 or 3, and then you'd rent it. And that's how we watched it. And now, man, look what they've done during the quarantine. I mean, coming out and putting on those 4 or 5 fights.
Yeah, we just had three fights in Jacksonville in a week.
Yeah, I mean, that's really giving people hope, and one of those sports that, but like anything else, I think the quarterbacks in pro football today are the size of what offensive linemen used to be, right?
Yeah, so, absolutely.
It's insane. So you've reffed, I'm sure, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of matches in the MMA level. And what are your most memorable matches that you've reffed?
Oh,
and and have you ever found yourself like you're supposed to be reffing these two guys, but yet you're like,
not so much, because what a lot of people don't realize, like, one thing I'll say to anybody that's ever considering, that's an MMA fan that ever considered becoming a ref, it will ruin the way you watch fight, like, for the rest of your life, because you don't watch the fight the same way as an official as you do as a fan. So even now, even though I've retired from MMA completely at this point, even now to watch a UFC, like, I can't watch it the same way because I'm always thinking like a referee. So there's some fights, unless it is really, really one-sided, there are fights where, like, I go to the announcer and ask him, if it goes to a decision, whose hand I'm raising, because you really don't watch it in the sense of who's winning, who's losing. So I'd caution anybody against getting into it if they don't want that fan aspect of them to die. But there's a few times, yeah, you absolutely get a different feel for the punches, the kicks, the blows, it's a lot more. I don't think the average person realizes just how hard these guys hit, and ladies too, by the way. There are many a female fighter that I have refereed. Right now, I would not 1 second want them to punch me in the mouth. I mean, people just don't realize it. When you're right there, when you can feel the concussion in the air from a shot that somebody just took with 4-ounce gloves on, that it definitely it changed it. But a lot of heavyweights are especially like, you don't want to get caught in the middle there.
What is the what's the biggest match you've ever refed?
I did a UFC in Orlando a few years back, and there was a fight there that I refereed. I'm probably going to butcher say his name, but big guy from Africa, Nagano. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you what, he knocked his opponent out. I was refereeing that fight with an uppercut, and I thought he killed him. I mean, if his neck would have been broken and the guy would have never came to, it would not have shocked me. That was probably the only fight I've ever refereed that I was actually just at that split second, like I panicked a little bit, like inside myself, like, oh my God.
I think he's doing that to every ref because he's just incredible.
Yeah, incredibly strong guy, super nice guy too, by the way. Like, just to talk to him as a person, great guy, very humble, but he hit that guy, and I thought he broke his neck. I mean, it was just that, and that was that. If there's one shot that I probably ever remember forever, it was that one, because I thought they were going to take that guy out on the stretcher. And
he's amazing. I think, isn't he the one right now that's they're talking about? I think they're talking about him talking
about giving him a shot. Yeah, he deserves one too.
I don't think he's not. He hasn't fought DC yet, I don't think. I think that's the one where DC's but DC's just another level, man. That guy's incredible. Every time I think someone's going to knock him out or punch him, or another puncher comes along, he finds a way to grab him.
Well, if we want to, I guess, somewhat circle back to something that you said earlier, it's like, aside from just the familiarity with the wrestler and able to move around on the ground, the intangible thing that is a big part of the reason that I think wrestlers are so successful in MMA is just work ethic, and they already understand how to train hard and the level of dedication that it takes to be good at sport. And I just experienced it through wrestling. You start talking about guys like DC, who have done it at the highest levels. Like, they're already used to that grind. They already know what it's like to work hard, train hard, get their diet right, all that stuff. So all that stuff is that's run of the mill. It's not something that they have to get used to. So they have a work ethic and a mental toughness that it takes to be successful in MMA the day they walk in the door. So after that, it's literally just building them skill sets that they don't have. But the dedication and the heart and the work ethic and all that, I think, probably plays in more even than groundwork. Because if you don't have those things, I don't care what sport it is, whether it's MMA or whether it's golf or any sport in between. If you don't have the work ethic, the dedication, and the commitment to do it to the level you need to, then you're never going to be successful as a professional.
Yeah, so, he's building quite a program there at Gilroy out there in California. So
yeah, there's several. I mean, there's several just gyms all over the country that are just producing killers all the time. And a lot of them you don't hear their names a lot. There's half a dozen that are just constantly putting out pro level guys all the time. They're, you know, if not champions, contenders. And then of course you've got the uber successful gyms like, you know, Greg Jackson's out in New Mexico, just constantly running chains through the mill, you know. And it's the old iron sharpens iron thing, right? It's, you know, get all those guys together in one place, and it's no different than the wrestling room in that respect, you know. You get programs that just breed success, and MMA is no different.
Wow. Well, this has been cool having this conversation with you, man. I'm really having a good time here. So I've got my 10 questions for you. You ready?
All right.
Being the ref or being the fighter?
The fighter, even though I'm old, I'd have to be young, but definitely being the fighter.
Punched in the face or choked out?
Oh, choked out all day.
Tampa Bay or St. Pete?
Tampa Bay.
Freshwater fishing or saltwater fishing?
Fresh.
4-ounce gloves or 6-ounce gloves?
4.
Dino's Drive-In or Andy's Igloo?
Andy's Igloo.
Rear naked or arm bar?
Rear naked.
I should wear my glasses. Grove Roots or Union Tap Room?
Yeah, I've never been to Union Tap, but I have been to Grove Roots, so I'm going to go with Union Tap.
I like it. When I don't know if you've heard me on the show, my brother and sister-in-law are partners in St. Pete Brewing Company.
Okay.
St. Pete, so I'm trying to plan something down there once they get open back up. So I'll let you know when we do that. You can come down and hang out with us. Mexican food or Italian food?
Man, I don't know if I could get me like a lasagna burrito. I think that would be amazing. I'm pretty split down the middle. I'll probably go with Mexican.
I like it. All right. I try to do some research here because I've been trying to make these questions about you and not me. Simmers Young Park or Marshall Reserve?
Marshall Reserve.
When I asked the young wrestlers or the coaches, like I was talking to some Virginia Tech guys, and I guess there's a hiking trail out there or there's a tubing river, and they all told me tubing river. The coach must have made us run thousands of miles in the hiking trail. We don't like that place. We like the river. We can lay on the tube and down. So they're like, yeah, our calves still remember that hiking trail.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's awesome, man. Hey, man, I'd love to do it again someday. I'd love to meet you in person one day when I get down there.
Yeah, man, well, I'll be around.
We come down. I know we take our team to every year. There's a tournament in Lakeland there at one of the big schools, George Jenkins.
Okay, well, I might be working that one, so that's our association's tournament. So.
Oh, nice, man, nice. So I look forward to meeting you one day, and when we're allowed to go out and play, I'll definitely get down to have a beer.
Yeah, all right, brother. Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. And anybody you know in the MMA world or the wrestling world that you feel like would be good for the show, please feel free to send them my link and let's
Okay. All right, brother.
Hey, thank you so much again, and I appreciate everything you do for the sport, and keep it up.
All right, thanks, man. Have a good one.
You too.